Hey, what's up? I'm Mike Squires, and this is the Couch Riffs Podcast, episode number 113, with my guest, Dweezil Zappa. Dweezil Zappa, who has been keeping Frank's music alive on stage in the glorious manner for about 14 years now, doing Zappa Plays Zappa. Before that, having a great career performing his own music, as well as a host of other things that he has done throughout his life. But the last large chunk of his life has been focused on preserving and presenting Frank's music to a live audience, which I certainly appreciate, and plenty of people appreciate, because if not him, then who? And if not how he's doing it, then how? Because he's really knocking it out of the park. But he's also, on the day that this podcast publishes, he's launching a web-based service for musicians and artists called Reward Music. And this is a way for artists to connect more directly and reward fans and supporters more directly, and to, have a much greater opportunity to earn a livable wage and a sustainable living, perhaps. Certainly more than a lot of the models that are out there for us now, So I wish him the best of luck. Go check it out. There's a link in the description of this podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I appreciate it. There are a number of ways that you can support Couch Riffs. You can go to couchriffs.com and navigate to our store. You can buy t-shirts. You can buy a trucker hat. You can share episodes. You can like episodes. You can do all those things. You can leave a great review or a 5-star rating, and those things are all greatly appreciated and help a lot. Even just simply clicking the 5 stars on the rating really helps keep us in the algorithm. And so thank you so much if you're already doing that. There are a number of folks who are pledge supporters already. You can pledge support for as little as 99 cents a month at anchor.fm, who publishes the podcast for me. There's a link in this podcast. You can also go to anchor.fm and search for Couch Riffs. So right now, I want to thank all the folks who have been giving me support. So right now, thank you, Ryan Waters, Hayden Smith, Ryan Hooper, Matt Gabbs, Justin Jones, Doug Starkovic, Deja Colantuono, Rochelle Parker, Chris Smith, Adam Pranica, Dan Hurst, James Pope, S.J. Somerset Sullivan, Mike Lacerda, Jamie McParland, Dan Leary, Kathy Giordano, Rebecca Pellman, Danny Bland, Soto Rebellos. Let's see. Thank you to Ryan Crace, Paul Hutzler, Hayden Smith, Steve Hall, Teresa Morgan, Rolla Amplifiers, Perry Morgan, and last but not least, River City Guitars. River City Guitars is a radical little guitar store in Spokane, Washington, run by my good buddy, Bobby Kluss. Now, Bobby is super cool. Bobby knows what's cool. Bobby knows what's up. And so, his inventory, and you're not going to find it all online, but you should go check out rivercityguitars.com. And you should follow them on social media, because you're going to see a lot of stuff hit social media and it'll be gone before it can even get to the website. So, Bobby just has an eye for vintage cool stuff. Now, they don't just have vintage stuff. They have, more contemporary and just sort of cool new boutique-y stuff, but go check it out. And if you are in the market to move something, sell something, or even trade, give them a shout. You can reach out to them at sales.rivercityguitars@gmail.com or call them up at 509-818-7693. Now, every week I pick something off the website and feature it on Couch Riffs. This week, I've been playing a lot of bass lately, so this week, what I'm featuring is a 1967 Gibson EB2C. Now, what that is like kind of like a 335, right? But it's a bass. It's so sick, and it's cherry. Comes with the original hard case. It's in great shape. It's got that crazy tailpiece that kind of like a Thunderbird has, and one big humbucker in the neck position. This thing is a thumper. A thumper. Comes in at 8.5 pounds, and you'll be able to play a long set with this thing. It's priced at $24.99, but go make an offer. There's no harm in that, right? RiverCityGuitars.com. Go get a look. Thanks again for listening. I really appreciate it. I'm going to jump into this podcast. Don't forget the golden rule, treat people the way you want to be treated, and don't be a dick. Those things very, very often go hand in hand.
Hello.
There you are. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you crystal clear. How you doing this morning? Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I have few valid complaints.
Yes, there are many to go around these days.
The world is a nutty place.
Indeed. Yes. So yesterday, late in the afternoon, this little tiny dog showed up. We'd never seen it in the neighborhood, and it just walked right into our yard, and we could not find where it came from.
No tag.
And so now we just have this dog. We're going to still, keep figuring out if it's somebody's, but I think it might end up being ours now.
What kind of dog is it?
I don't even know. It seems like it's part, what's that one spaniel, like the St. Charles or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really small, but it's kind of like, it looks like a cross between that kind of spaniel and a little fox. It's a really cute dog. Well behaved so far. So
this seems like good fortune.
Yeah. So it could be a good thing.
Do you have dogs otherwise? Do you have other dogs?
No, we haven't had any pets because we were always traveling so much, but now we're not traveling so much. So
it's a whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
When we moved out of the city, we were so excited because, we moved out of a Brooklyn apartment into a house upstate. And the first thing I wanted to do, aside from getting a riding lawnmower, was I wanted to get a dog. And we got one, and I was super happy. And my wife was so ecstatic about it that she thought that getting a second dog would be a better. And recently, she's even talked about getting a third dog. And but I've drawn the line.
You're like, let's cool it with the dog madness.
2 is cool. Yeah, 2 is cool. 2 is cool. Let's talk about having a kid. We don't need a third dog. Are you calling the dog anything?
At the moment, we are calling it Rollo.
Rollo with 2 L's.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rollo is a composer?
Well, it's like a Nordic name that was the name of several kings, but my dad had a song called Rollo, which is part of the whole story of St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast and all that stuff. So little family history.
Yeah. My last, of course, this year's been, everything's upside down and sideways. My last concert, I think, I guess I have it here in my stack of stuff. March 11. I think, how soon after March 11 did you guys pack it up and head home?
Not long. Where was that?
Albany, New York.
So like maybe the next day, because we played in Tarrytown and we were the last show in New York State to play before they shut down everything.
Right. What a bummer deal for all touring musicians or musicians who primarily focus on that, but I think people who aren't hung up on the negative or who are like very proactive, which you certainly are, get right into, all right, well, what can I do?
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't really have a choice. You have to adapt. So,
Right.
you know,
I,
it's like if you were swimming without a life preserver, you'd have to do something.
well, you do one thing or the other, yeah.
Yeah. So,
But I'll say first, well, thanks for coming on. That show was awesome, and it inspired me to get a bass uke.
oh, yeah, those things are great.
I mean, I got one. I literally got one the next week
Nice.
after seeing you guys perform and your bass player using one, and I was like, wow, that sounds amazing, and I
It
use it all
really,
the time.
it does have the quality of a stand-up bass, even though it's so tiny. It's just, there's something about the tonality and the string noise and stuff. It's pretty cool.
And what a great tool for a touring band, so you don't have to pack around an
Yeah.
upright bass, right?
Yep.
You guys got I mean, you had a, is it a 5 piece? I'm trying to think back. Is it a 5 or a 6 piece band?
In that tour, it was, let's see.
That'd be, I think,
So
5.
it's without me, it was keyboards, Sheila, bass, drums. So, and then Adam. So it was 6 piece.
And for that era of music, how big would Frank's band have been?
For, you mean just for the Hot Rats?
Yeah.
Um, well, he had several little attempts at doing tours around the time of that, and it was always a pretty small band, so 5 or 6 people,
Oh, wow.
which made sense. He didn't get into the bigger bands until several years later because it's obviously very expensive to have
Yeah.
a lot of musicians on the road.
You don't say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was a treat because I hadn't seen you do the thing. That was my first time seeing it, and it was great. It absolutely did not disappoint, and I'm very pleased that was, of any of the shows that could have been the last show that I saw for, the foreseeable future. I'm very happy that was it. So,
Oh, great. Well,
thank you for
thanks.
bringing the show to Albany. That was amazing.
Thanks. Yeah. So I'm ready. I don't know if you've already started recording and we're getting into it, but we could just do however you do it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm recording from the top. I can kill the part about the dog if you want.
No, that's totally fine.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Can I ask you? I want to talk about the service that you're launching, Reward. I've been exploring the website a bit and reading about it, and talk to you about a bunch of stuff. Really, it's
Sure.
typically the conversations are real relaxed. I don't have a list of literally have 0 questions written down in front of me. It's not like that.
Okay.
But I do want to ask you straight off the bat about Reward, because
Sure.
it's super interesting. Um, I love the idea. I love everything about it, and the idea behind it seems pure. It doesn't come across as like, okay, well, what's the catch? It's like everything is right up front there in front of you. Could you tell folks a little bit about the service and about
Sure.
how it came about?
Yeah. So what you're mentioning is a new music platform called Reward Music, which we're launching tomorrow. Actually, we're doing what we're calling a soft launch so that we can get the communities started and have some working sites, excuse me, so that it's even easier to explain exactly what it is. On paper, it's a bit of a challenge to explain all the functionality of it, but essentially, what it is a way for artists to, well, it levels the playing field for the artist. Let's put it that way. Since the beginning of time, the recording industry has not been very fair with how it treats artists. And right now, the music industry is suffering in so many ways because of the pandemic, but it's also the industry itself is still continuing to treat artists in a way that is just unfair. So, what started as a discussion in my kitchen with a friend of mine, this guy, Stephen Volpe, I've known him for about, I don't know, almost 30 years. And we were talking about the problems that musicians face. And we were thinking maybe there's a way to create an all-in-one solution. And since he had a web hosting company and a lot of tools that were pretty spectacular tools for the hosting stuff, we thought maybe we could tweak some of these things and make the ultimate artist business solution. And so we started it. We started working on it or talking about it a little over a year ago. But then when COVID hit, it became a much more necessary thing to focus on. So it's a music platform that allows artists to get organized and put all of their stuff in one place. And they have the ability to control all of the pricing, including pay-per-view video, live events, live streams, anything they want. So it's your own broadcasting channel, it's your own community, it's your website, it's your merch store, it's every single thing that you could ever need. It's your calendar linked to your email so that you can have events on your calendar that have automatic um, notifications for people when you're doing something. So if you are playing a concert, you can notify everyone within 200 miles of that concert automatically. And there's all kinds of things that it does that replaces having to have a team of people. It replaces the middleman in so many things. And ultimately, what you get from it is you have your bank account attached to this one place that has all your content, and you get 100% of every sale. And that is like a unicorn when it comes to
Yeah.
things for artists, because typically there's always a bunch of parasites hanging around trying to get their percentage of anything they can get from an artist. And we just wanted to limit that and restrict the amount of middlemen as much as possible. And so that's what we set out to do. And it's kind of a long explanation to say it's an all-in-one business tool that allows you to put everything in one place and make 100% of the money.
It's,
Um,
it sounds kind of like it's taking the service that maybe 5 or 8 different platforms uh, offer individually and tweaks them a little bit and puts them all in one place for people to use and contact and interact with people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. So on our website, we have a feature comparison list, and we compare what we're offering at Reward Music to services from Bandcamp, Bandzoogle, Patreon, SoundCloud, Wix, Shopify, Kajabi, and Reverb Nation. Now, we have in our list of things that are included for $20 a month website, a whole rewards package, which we didn't even talk about, which every action gets a fan, any fan action of support on the site, they earn points for, and it's automatic. So artists finally have a way to reward their fans for supporting them. So we have a whole reward system, mail, audio streaming, store, merchandise. You can do crowdsource funding. You have your calendar, which is all connected to your email, video streaming, your own community, all of your own statistics, dashboard reporting tools. You can have subscription services for any of your content. And you can even host your own podcast or do video presentations that are on a per fan basis. Cameo is a service like that where a fan can ask you to make a video to say happy birthday to their grandmother. Right. And they'll pay you money to do that. You can do that same kind of thing right here on Reward as well. So all of those things are listed as things that are included for what Reward Music can do. But in all of the other companies that I mentioned, Bandcamp, Bandzoogle, Patreon, SoundCloud, Wix, Shopify, Kajabi, Reverb Nation, those companies all have different services that they do that they specialize in. But in Reward, you can have everything that all of those things do in one place. And all those companies that I mentioned do not have all of these things in one place. In fact, some of them only have 2 or 3 things that I mentioned. You can look at the chart and you'll see that we offer everything and they don't.
Right.
So,
let's see, a couple questions. What is an example of something? Because fans sort of earn points by commenting and liking and sharing, and what is an example of what they can use these points for?
Well, the system is designed to reward them for the things that you said, whether it's commenting or listening to stuff or downloading things or posting photos or getting involved in group forums and chats and all of those things. But the biggest rewards that you can earn are from subscribing to an artist directly. And beyond that, when music starts happening in a live situation again, we'll have live check-in points at venues. And that's where artists and fans can really make great direct connection. And that's where the fans can get the best rewards, especially if they're bringing new people. If you're responsible for bringing new people to a show and creating new fans, that is a very valuable thing for the fans to be able to do for an artist, and artists have never had a chance to reward their fans for doing that. So, for example, it's pretty natural for anyone to spread the word if they like something. So if you've had a really good meal, you're very likely to tell your friends, oh my God, I had the best food at this place. You got to go try it. You're probably going to tip the waiter or waitress if they gave you very good service and say, this was so great. It's not any different when you hear music that you like. You call your friends. I remember being a kid and we would listen to stuff over the phone. If you didn't have the new record, but your friend did, you would just listen to it over the phone. It sounded terrible, but at least you were hearing it,
Oh, I punished people when I was a kid that way. Usually with my own playing.
But the thing is, that is exactly the kind of thing that fans get rewarded for, just naturally doing what they do. If they tell their friends and their friends get into it and then they start supporting the artist, this is the way for artists to have a direct connection and deepen that connection with their fans, because they have the ability to reward them with better special pricing or more exclusive content. And subscriptions make it so that if you are subscribing directly to the artist, you'll have content that is unlocked for you that's not going to be available to other people who aren't subscribers. And it's very easy for artists to upload new things, video or audio. So it's going to be up to each individual artist as to how much they put up and how often they're adding to their subscription stuff. And that is part of what will start to take place when some of these sites are live. People will start to figure out how they want to interact and how much they want to do and how often. So that's something that I'm working on right now before we launch. You want to make sure that you can deliver the things that you're saying that you're going to give people. And so that's an important part of creating that trust and that relationship with your fan base. And really at this time, there's never been a more important time for fans to support musicians directly, because musicians, quite honestly, there's many people that have been affected by the pandemic, but the entire musician industry, or music industry, including all of the crew people that work in live entertainment, that work with the bands. Everybody
sound people
has, everybody has a real struggle trying to find an alternative way to continue to make a living and have a predictable way to do it. Because even when things do start happening again in the music business, it's going to be different. There are going to be venues opening with smaller capacity. All of the money that it used to cost to do a certain thing is going to be different now. They're going to add cost to the artist for extra cleanings for venues. And so it's going to be a different world. And that's why reward music is so important, because you can continue that relationship with your fans. But when you're not able to do live performances, you're able to do specialized events that you can broadcast right from your own reward music site. And I think that it really is the best way for artists to revalue their own content and be in control of their stuff, instead of having to give it away on social media, which that's what people are used to doing, just making content and giving it away for free. But what you see is a lot of people will be doing stuff like that, but then saying, okay, come support me here at my Patreon, or my this, that, or the other, or 5 other things that they tell them to go to. Reward music is just one place that you have to post your stuff, and you can use your social media to tell people to come find you there.
It's
and
crazy
it just makes
that,
it easier.
The thing that most all of us have complained about, like, we've all been asked to do a gig, like, oh, you should come do this gig or do this thing or perform at this event. It'll be good exposure for you. And it's just like such a crap bucket way to, exploit someone. Like, oh, come do your thing, come perform. You won't make any money, but it'll be great for you. But now we're all voluntarily doing that.
Well, what's crazy is people didn't see it happening, but the value of music itself was transferred to an entirely other industry, the service industry, meaning membership service. So Spotify is selling you a membership that gives you access to music, but they get the music for free. They don't buy the music and then sell it to you. The typical person that is using Spotify, they're not buying music. They're just renting music, or they're renting the proximity to music. And so if you look at it in a different way, let's say the rental car industry, if you're going to rent a car, you're going to spend money to rent that car and you're going to drive that car. But the rental company still had to buy the car before they had to rent it to you. So the value of that industry still stays in the automotive industry as well. But that's different than what's happened with music. The value of the music has plummeted to nothing because people think, oh, well, music's supposed to be free, I'm not going to buy music. But yet they'll spend all this money to have access to music. So the value was transferred elsewhere, and musicians don't get the benefit of that. So it's like the equivalent of child labor working in a sequin mine. It's like,
Sure. I worked at, do you know CD Baby?
yeah.
I worked at CD Baby in 2007, from 2007 to 2009, maybe even into 2010. But even back then, we were delivering music to Spotify and LimeWire and all these other, these places. And I would have never seen the streaming music service being what it is, even though they insisted that that was what the future was going to be. I just couldn't fathom it. I was like, oh, no, you got to be kidding me. That won't work. But here we are.
Well, it doesn't work.
It works for some people, right?
Yeah, it works. It works for the service industry part of it, but it doesn't work for the musicians.
No.
There's a handful of musicians that do well from Spotify, but here's the biggest thing about reward. These numbers will make sense to people when they really check it out. It takes 3.8 million streams for somebody to make minimum wage on Spotify.
Is that right?
I can't do that. I'll never get 3.8 million streams, but that is supposed to be, this attainable thing for people, but it isn't. And so let's look at it on reward. If you have people that subscribe to you directly as an artist on your reward music powered artist site, the subscription costs $2.50. That's roughly the price of a cup of coffee per month, right? So
where are you getting your coffee? 7-Eleven?
Pardon?
You getting your coffee at 7-Eleven? I spend more than.
I'm just saying that if you're going to try to put it into perspective for someone, so let's talk about how this works. When I say subscribing to an artist directly, you are literally just subscribing to that artist. You're not subscribing to Reward Music, which then has a whole host of songs and artists. It's not Spotify. This is a subscription platform that allows you to support your favorite artist directly. So if you like 10 bands, you can get 10 subscriptions, each one going directly to that artist right from their page.
100% of the money to them.
Right. And so what happens is it's $2.50. 50 cents of that, even though the artist is collecting all of it, they are still going to have costs involved because they have a merchant service account that has to handle credit cards and stuff. So that is an artist cost, but it's going to be 50 cents of that $2.50 subscription. So the artist is going to clear $2. And now you put that into perspective of how do we get to minimum wage with a $2 subscription? It only takes 700 people to subscribe to you, and you would make $16,800, which beats minimum wage compared to 3.8 million streams.
Right.
So what we're talking about here is having artists have a new perspective of how to cultivate a deeper relationship with their fans, instead of thinking, oh, let me cast the widest net and attempt to sell $1 worth of entertainment to 1 million people. Think more in terms of visualizing, creating a space to give people a very highly curated experience from you. And now you have the ability to possibly make $100 from 10,000 people, because these are people that are coming back for more, and they're doing things, they're subscribing, they're buying things, you're interacting with them. Now, you can make the same amount of money as casting that wide net, but the audience is getting a way better, like I said, highly curated experience. And you have the ability to maintain and sustain a relationship with your core fans. And that is the real difference here. And that's why this is a very valuable tool as a business solution for artists, because they can create a better experience for their fans, and they can do things more frequently, and they can do unique things, and they can be directly in touch and reward their fans automatically. But you can really do more for less. It starts at $20 a month, and people say, well, how does Reward make money? Reward Music is a hosting service, and we sell bandwidth. And so as your community grows and more things happen, and you have more audio and video and people interacting with it, the cost of your service will go up, but it goes up fractionally, and it goes up in perspective to your actual audience. So all the numbers of how that works are on the site, and you're always going to make way more money than you're going to spend to use the service.
Wait a minute, are you trying to tell me that this is a model where people who make less pay less and people who make more pay more? How preposterous.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing here is that we have a place for everything, and everything in its place. And that's, of course, a very nice quote from Benjamin Franklin. But it's really like a sustainable way to deepen the relationship with your fans. And as an artist, you can have so much more flexibility because you make the rules. Now, of course, that artists that are on a label can still easily work with Reward Music, because it's no different than having your music put up on iTunes or Spotify or any of these places, other than the fact that you actually make more money when you put it up here. And a label, if they are collecting for you because it's part of your contract, they can set up their own merchant service account on your Reward Music powered site, and they can collect what is due to them under their contract. But you, as the artist, can have your own separate merchant service account, which is a Stripe account, and you can collect separately from the record company for all the things that don't apply to them. So you have the ability to still have one place, and you can do everything from that one place, and you're going to get better transparent accounting from this site than you will anywhere else.
Well, you're certainly going to get more transparent accounting than you would with a record label.
Yes, I think the word opaque is probably the best description of the accounting you would get from a record label.
If I had a nickel for every time I've heard, someone that I know say, well, we had to audit the record label, and I don't know, somehow we came up with $3 million. Like, that's incredible. Are you with $3 million just sitting around somewhere that they didn't notice? You got to be kidding me.
Yeah, but then good luck collecting it.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I appreciate the most about this, and this is something that probably the common music fan doesn't even consider, but you think about all of the musicians in the world. Some are performing at a high level, touring, playing in front of large crowds. That's people who operate at that level are only a fraction of the musicians out there. And they're only a fraction of the musicians that you would really enjoy if you had the opportunity to be exposed to. And that other massive piece of the pie, those people all have full-time jobs. And so when you are preoccupied with working and then you get off work and you go to your work on your music, your energies are diminished. I mean, I work my ass off and then, and then do the show. And so I know that for musicians and most creatives, if they had a more focused opportunity, and a lot of musicians are making minimum wage, that's what they do. So if they had the opportunity to even earn minimum wage, but not have the distraction of a job that they don't care about, their craft would be elevated.
Well, that's precisely the thing here. So if you are a teenager starting in your mom's basement, you can use this service to start your fan base, and you could be so ahead of the game because you would be collecting all the emails and all the data, and you would have the ability to be directly in touch with your fans from day one. You would not be giving them away to all these other platforms that excuse me, steal your fans' information and use it against you, essentially, because they sell all these platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and all that stuff. They offer up this information to all of your competitors. Anybody that wants to buy your fans can do it. And that's just not what this is about. We have set up what we are in alignment with as humane technology. And what that means really to us is that we are offering artists the opportunity to be in control of their own content. They will continue to own whatever they do. They will make money from it, but they will also be collecting everything on a permission base with their fans. And it's of mutual benefit. And that data is not being sold off or given to anyone. Reward Music doesn't touch that data. That is the artist and the fans connected directly. So this is, again, not like how other companies decide to do things. All these other platforms are made so that they take all the information and then they never give you the real information of what you have. And they try to make you have to buy ads from them to reach the people that you brought to the table.
Right.
So it's this preposterous circle that that people are just starting to come around to now.
Great racket.
Yeah, really. I mean, so
have
here's
you watched
here's
Social
another
Dilemma? Have you watched that Social Dilemma film?
I did see that. Yeah.
Oh God.
It's pretty treacherous, some of the things going on. But here's another good analogy of some of the tail chasing that that artists go through, which is, you'll often see that an artist will have 6 or 7 platforms that they'll be asking their fans to follow them on, which is confusing and hard to do. But what it's the equivalent of, let's say you had a brick and mortar business like a bank, where somebody walks in and says, okay, I want to set up an account. If you're the account manager, you don't tell them to go to 7 other places to do that. You
Right.
say, all right, great, sit down, let's do it right here. But an artist has a website, and the website says, go to my Facebook, go to my Twitter, go to my Instagram, go to my whatever. And that's the biggest problem right there, is that they are diluting everything and they're making content for all of these places. And yes, you can promote yourself and you can say, okay, I got to get the word out and I got to do these things. But at the end of the day, people are confused and they don't know where they can follow your best content and your music and all of this stuff. So
And if you
what you
put
do,
different, if you put it all up everywhere, that also dilutes it, right? It's like, well, which one do I want
what,
to follow?
yeah,
Do I follow all
yeah.
of them? What the fuck am I
So
doing?
if the internet was created today, artists would have a clear path to say, you know what would be great? I'd love to have all my stuff in one place, and I'd love for people to just come there, and I'd love to just connect with them directly so that I don't have to deal with all this other stuff. It's very clear and obvious that that would be the easiest, best way, but that's not how things were set up.
Right.
But it is at Reward.
Well, let me ask you this. I have to assume, I think it's very safe to assume that you are the first client there.
I'm definitely having a site that I will be launching tomorrow, which will show how it works. And, this will be the only place that I will be putting my music and other content up in the future.
Yeah.
I do have things that are available on iTunes and other places.
Because those are the places where people have had the opportunity to get them in the past.
Yes, but on my site, it will be possible to get things that aren't available other places. A lot of albums that were out of print, new things, and video. And one of the things that we're going to be working towards making a big element on Reward is multi-channel audio, Atmos and surround sound stuff, because the future of the delivery system for that is expanding, and you'll be able to just listen on regular headphones plugged into your phone and hear binaural multi-channel stuff that sort of swims around and spins around your head and goes up and down and all that kind of stuff. So that, I believe, is going to have a real effect on adding some value to music, because it will be in a new format that people will experience in a different way. And I think that'll make a difference to a lot of legacy artists as well, because their whole entire catalog will come back to life in a new way. So, I can imagine that we'll be seeing a lot of things from bands like Pink Floyd or the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin that end up in Atmos and other things that give you this three-dimensional musical experience. So that is a really cool thing that I look forward to in the near future. But that's definitely something that I'm working on myself, is I'm mixing stuff in Atmos, and I'm creating a catalog of stuff, and I hope to be able to work with other artists and do that. I actually had spoken with Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick, because I had a chance to talk to him when I was doing a podcast on the topic of Van Halen. But I had mentioned to him the Atmos thing, and I said, oh, I would love to mix one of your records in Atmos. And he said, you're hired. So we'll see if that actually happens, but that would be so cool.
Awesome. That is awesome. One of the coolest things I remember, and I had exposure to you in the 80s, seeing you on MTV, and then seeing the classic albums of what's the album? Overnight Sensation.
I think it was.
And being able to sit at a console and pull up individual parts, it like kind of twisted my head up, and having that realization, like, holy moly, the wealth, but then it started the gears turning, like there are thousands and thousands and thousands of reels of tape of live shows. And I guess, have you, on the subject of you mixing first of all, you've done probably a lot of studio work um, that people aren't probably even aware of.
Oh, well, yeah, there's lots of things that I've worked on, and I have a lot of things that I'm currently working on. So the things that I've learned over the years have helped me tremendously in terms of being a better musician, but also being better at making stuff work and sound better in the studio. So I think that side of stuff um, is lesser known because I haven't had that many things where I have specifically been doing all of that studio work that has been released yet. I have a big project that I'm doing that's called "What the Hell Was I Thinking," which is I started it almost. I mean, it's almost 30 years ago now, but it's an audio movie. It basically has it, at the moment it has about 40 different guitar players on it, and it's a continuous piece of music that changes from moment to moment. It morphs in different styles, and also the atmosphere, the ambience, the room size, the decor of everything changes moment to moment with the music. So it's a really strange project that I've been wanting to finish for a long time, and I still have some more players I'd like to have on it. But currently, it's got players like Edward Van Halen, Eric Johnson, Brian May, Angus and Malcolm Young, Steve Morse, Steve Vai, Brian Setzer, Yngwie Malmsteen.
Anyone I've heard of?
I don't know, maybe, you know. So there's a bunch of other people. I mean, I'd love to get uh, some other dream players on there, like Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page and Eric Clapton and Mark Knopfler and different people, David Gilmour. It'd be really great to have all of these things happen. So it's kind of the equivalent of, imagine if you saw a scene in a movie and it was a bunch of people waiting in line to get food at a cafeteria, and
Right.
everybody that you saw was a famous actor, whether it's Schwarzenegger or Stallone or the list goes on. You see different people, and they're all doing something that is similar, yet they're all going to do it in a different way.
Right.
And that's kind of what this is. The music changes, but you're hearing these guitar players who are very recognizable from the very first note that they play, and they just jump out of the speakers, and you just never know when it's going to happen or who's playing when, because the music really just changes. It's as if you were listening to the radio and changing stations constantly and getting discovering something new and sticking with it for a minute till you said, oh, now it's time for me to see what else I can find.
So,
It's
wait a minute. How long have you been working on this?
almost 30 years.
So, 30 years ago, uh, there was no Pro Tools.
That's right.
Um, how have you cleared that hurdle? You just transferred stuff over and
Yeah. So one of the reasons that it's taken a while is originally it was on analog tape, and because we were playing big chunks of music at the same time, sometimes we would do a piece that was 11 or 12 minutes long, and then you'd need to have another piece that was 7 minutes or 10 minutes long, and the reels typically wouldn't be able to hold that. There were some larger reels that you could use on certain tape machines that you could have more length on the reels, but the problem that we had unwittingly was that with the larger reels, as you get closer to the end, the tape speed changes without you really knowing.
right.
And you only discover it later when you try to add a new part, because nothing stays in tune. As the the tape is moving at a slightly different speed, it's changing the pitch of whatever was recorded at that time. And it may be very, very slight, but it makes it so that you can't stay in tune. So some of that stuff that we recorded, we had to take it and transfer it and record new parts that were stable at a stable tempo or speed. And so some of that stuff, periodically I was having technical problems, but as you mentioned in the beginning, computer DAW systems didn't exist then at the point where technology started changing. It went from analog tape to digital tape to other versions of digital tape like ADAT machines and D88 machines. So this project has been on analog tape. It's been on the Sony digital 48 machines. It's been on D88s. It's now in, I use Nuendo and Cubase as my DAW software. And so it's now in a computer format, but I've also spent the last 14 years straight touring. So I didn't have a lot of time to keep working on that project, but now I do have some time to start looking at that. And when I do finish it, I will actually mix it in Atmos as well, which is great because it will have the ability to really make all of the textures stand out. And you can have what Atmos has is it has the ability to have space above you. So you can have like a flyover where it goes from the ground up over your head, down your back. And, you can do crazy stuff. But, it's going to be exciting to hear this kind of stuff in a very three-dimensional way.
Have you, how much have you mixed in that format?
Well, I'm just getting into it now because I haven't had a place to actually do anything like that. But I've got something set up now where I can. So it's been very recent that I'm experimenting with it. But I've done some surround mixes before, some stuff for DVDs that I've done, and one of those DVDs is coming out soon. We're actually not going to do it as a DVD. We're just going to do it as streaming on Reward Music.
Awesome.
And so that's one of the things that we're actually trying to figure out is the best way to get the surround version to work. So that part is not specifically ready on Reward, but we can stream anything stereo. And a good thing to know about Reward too is if you're an artist and you're putting your music up, anything that you put up, whatever the bit rate and or the depth and the whatever the resolution that you have is, it's never transcoded on Reward. So
it's preserved.
The quality that you upload is the quality that someone will be able to download. And that gives you the ability to have MP3s or WAV files and change the pricing for these things. And it's also not subject to having any kind of crazy compression on playback that changes what you're hearing. So it's a really good place to hear good quality music and be able to deliver to your audience what you work so hard on to make it sound a certain way. Because people don't realize how much things change when you put it on other formats or, you put it on Spotify or something.
I want to ask you a couple more questions about the Atmos, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm like terrible at mixing. I've got terrible tinnitus from years of touring and just cymbals crashing in my right ear. And, but I do know enough that a lot of mixing is EQing. Like that's a very big piece of it. And that's just so that the oral puzzle fits together in a way that each part has its sonic space, right?
Yes.
Is it as important in that mixing format where if you have like, okay, here's a keyboard part that has a very present bass line, like left hand part down here, and then here's the electric bass up here existing in a physically different space. uh does the EQ still play as big a part, or is it sort of is that lifted?
Well, it's a good question. And what really is the difference is in traditional stereo mixing, you only have two speakers and you have a phantom center that you are able to perceive, but
Right.
you're still dealing with two speakers and you have a limited amount of space that you can have either side of center. And so EQ and compression are the things that make things really step forward. And what you're always trying to do is if you have things in similar frequency ranges, they might fight each other or mask each other. And you want to make them stand out the best that you can. But in Atmos or surround mixing, you have extra speakers to place things. So the energy that's going into those speakers dissipates and you have more room, more headroom. You don't have to use as much compression, and you could get away with not using as much really strong EQ, things that are pointy and stuff, because you have more space for things to exist in their own place. And so things really do feel more open, and it's really quite amazing how three-dimensional it becomes, because depending on how you decide to arrange the mix, you as the listener can be put into a space in between the instruments in a
It'd
way
be like
that,
sitting in the studio.
yeah, or just feeling like you're standing on the stage in the middle of everybody, as opposed to just being an audience member and hearing everything come at you from the front. Now,
imagine
there are,
imagine mixing in Atmos so that it was kind of like pre in ears, right? And just give an audience member like, here's a bonus for you. This is my terrible idea. This will be my bonus. This will be my top tier reward. I want to mix a live performance in Atmos so that you can experience how difficult it was before in ears on stage.
well, we actually, before all of this pandemic stuff, we were working on a way to do a like up to 12 person mix where they would be able to hear uh, a specialized live mix in headphones that was essentially the same mix that I'm hearing in my in ears, which really ends up sounding very much like a CD mix. It's very, you hear all the instruments very clear. It's very balanced, and the thing that's crazy is that there is technology that exists where you could hear things in surround, even in that kind of environment, up to the point where you could have your head movements recognized. And if you turned towards something, it would turn that object up, so you could have this really crazy experience in that way where um,
Whoa.
I've tried it on stage, and it's not something that the feature where when you turn and look at something, it turns up. That's not beneficial really, when you're on stage, because you need it to be more balanced, but it is pretty cool that it actually works.
Wow. That's pretty insane. That's some Skynet kind of shit.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
Uh wow. I mean, technology is really insane. Um, and I think that I could imagine even when you started playing guitar, you probably heard plenty of recordings, and I mean I still enjoy them, where like an old Kinks record or even a Beatles record, it's like, oh, the drums are all they're just like 100% panned left, and the vocals all the way to the right, and that was the height of technology.
Well, the thing was, there weren't any specific rules at that point when you had the extra speaker. I had the good fortune to work with Jeff Emmerich, who recorded many of the Beatles records. And I asked him about a lot of the things between the difference when it went from mono to stereo and how they were working. And it used to be that at Abbey Roads, they had one speaker when everything was mono, and it would be in the far right corner of the room on the ground. So that's like a totally different perspective or understanding. So you were in a room, this is the place where you're mixing the record, and you're hearing this speaker from the right side of the room on the ground, and it's one speaker. It's kind of like what you would expect if you were like in a restaurant or something where you're in an ambient environment and music is being played back, and you want to be able to hear the detail of the things that are the most focused elements in the mix. And that's how they did it. They had very, very little in the way of EQ, and they had some compression, but instead of opting for EQ, they would often just change the microphone or change the type of guitar or type of amplifier to get something brighter or a slightly different mid-range so that it wouldn't clash with the other things that were in the mix. So they did it in a different way. So imagine if you only had one mic in a room and the only way to turn something up was to be closer to the mic. That's what used to be the early days of rock and roll recordings, Elvis and all that kind of stuff, where there's one mic and whoever was the featured person had to be closest to the mic and everybody else had to be a bit further away. And that's how it was mixed.
So crazy. Technology.
Yep.
Um, I love that. I mean, I guess clearly you've done a lot of deep diving musically and technologically. I've seen you, as I communicated to you before, I'm friends with Andrew McCaig and Mike Musburger. And so I've been out whenever the Experience Hendrix thing was in New York. I've been out and I've seen you perform with those guys. And I know you use, which modeler do you use? Do you use an
The
accent
fractal.
or the fractal? They're
Mm-hmm.
great, but
Yeah,
you can go deep in those things.
for sure. Yeah, you can. A fractal axe effects, for people that don't know, it's a guitar system that's all in a box. That's two rack spaces. Actually, the new one is three rack spaces, but it's basically like a DAW, but you plug your guitar into it, and you have the ability to have any effects routing, any amplifier or speaker, and you can dial up sounds that are album specific and detailed to the point of A/B comparison, where you have been able to completely recreate the actual sonic features of your favorite album. So whether it's a Frank Zappa album or a Beatles album or a Van Halen album, you can you can get the very specifically nuanced sound that you're hearing on those records if you know how to do it. And it's really cool. So the Hendrix stuff, I've been able to dial in very album specific sounds. Like when I play the song Freedom, he's got 6 or 7 different sounds on that song alone. And I'm trying to play a contiguous guitar part that kind of dabbles in all of those sounds, sometimes all at once as well. But I was able to do a lot of like the panning stuff and different things that exist in the mix that just bring it to another level of authenticity. So it's fun to be able to do it.
Well, yeah. And if you were going to do that even as recently as 10 years ago, you would have a truckload just of guitar gear.
Yeah, you'd have to have like 2 refrigerator sized racks and over 400 connections and all this kind of stuff, you know. And I know that because I had that before the Fractal, when I was doing all the stuff for the tours, the early tours, playing my dad's music. I had a very large, totally analog setup with 3 different amplifiers, 3 different speakers, and a lot of effects that were going into different routings, to different places, pedals. It was a really cool sounding thing, and it took up a lot of space, and it was very expensive to move around. But the problem really was that it there was always a cable that would get disconnected or something, because traveling on the road with something that has
Right.
that much going on is it's just not easy to do, and probably most likely not recommended.
And
You know?
troubleshooting something like that, not simple.
No, it really, and you really need to know it as an artist. You need to know how the thing works, and a lot of times artists don't. They like, oh, I press the button and I make this sound, but somebody else actually built the sound for them.
Right.
And I had to know everything because I was the one putting it all together to begin with. And then it's hard to have somebody else know everything and be able to be up to date with it to recognize what the problem is. Because I might hear some slight little issue where something is overdriving in a way that it shouldn't. There's like some distortion happening. So if somebody was checking the guitar sound before I got there and they're like, oh yeah, everything's working great, and then I go play it, I'm like, no, it's not. You know?
So when you built the old analog rig that you toured with, you
Mm-hmm.
built that yourself? There was no one helping you, or was there someone that was sort of
Well, I
a
had
tech?
people helping actually wire it up and things, but I would select the equipment and the routing where it would go, plug everything in. So in the beginning stages, you're just plugging a bunch of stuff in and
Right.
making chains of gear, and it's a huge mess, and it's like Frankenstein laboratory.
Snakes
But then
running everywhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
when you find out, okay, this plugs into this and this sounds good this way, then you find a way to put it in a rack and start racking it up and plugging it in. And inevitably, when you do that, you find out that, oh, this piece of gear doesn't like to be so close to this one because now we have a terrible hum. And we didn't have it before when this was on the floor and it was 2 feet away from it, you know? So there's all these kind of problems that creep in. So you're constantly troubleshooting.
And so now I imagine you could do a fly-in gig. Like that was an impossibility before. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have a smaller rig so I could fly, and we have done stuff like that. But it's it's still really hard for our band to do something like that because we have such specific equipment, and we always need a a good sound check to make everything really work.
Sure.
So we've done festivals and things where you have some rented gear for like the drums or maybe the keyboards, but even the keyboards, the people that are playing them have to have their own sound libraries that they will add into those keyboards, and they have to test those things before the show. And
Right,
so,
because navigating through the interface on those keyboards is very specific in the context of a performance.
yeah, so that's the thing, is that everything that you do, if you have a set list and you need to have a certain group of sounds easily retrievable for those songs, that's a lot of programming. And for me on the guitar rig, it's not unusual for me to have 4 or 5 or even 6 sounds needed in one song. So that would be like a bank of stuff that I would have to have available to me. And usually I have alternate sounds under each button. So if I have 6 sounds, I usually have 12 sounds because there's an alternate under each one. But the thing is, if you change the set list, now you have to move all those sounds, and so
Right.
it's a lot of stuff to keep track of. It's not just, hey, everybody, we're going to go play a show. We walk up on stage, we play, and we leave. It's like there's all this work to get everything set up. And, when I'm on tour, I'm usually in with the crew when we get to the venue at like 11 in the morning. And then I'll be out with the crew packing stuff up and doing things. And I'm usually oftentimes the very last person to leave the venue.
Yeah. Wow. Uh, Preparing like for the very, I guess, I mean, you're in constant preparation, I would imagine, but you are exploring such a massive body of work when you do Zappa Plays Zappa. And when you went out, and I imagine you probably have a pretty solid system worked out now, and you've probably taken a pretty good look at a lot of stuff. But when you were getting ready to do it for the first time, it must have seemed just like a Mount Everest.
Well, it did. I've been around the music my whole life, so
Familiarity is
yeah,
there.
I was familiar with it, but that doesn't mean I could just automatically play any of it.
Right.
And memorizing it and playing the hard stuff that I was playing on the guitar, some of the stuff I chose to learn had never been played on the guitar, and for good reason, because it's not meant to be played on the guitar. It
Right.
was so hard. But the the challenge to be able to play the music and let the music speak for itself, that was always the goal in the beginning. Where some people were very ready to be the armchair critic and have their arms crossed and look at it and say, okay, yeah, this is going to suck, can't wait for this. And then when you play, they're like, oh, wait a minute, this is not what I expected. These guys really spent the time to do this right. And that's what the goal was from the beginning, and that's what we've done the entire time. If you do an A/B comparison to what we're playing versus the albums, it's a pretty much apples to apples comparison, because we put that amount of time and effort and due diligence and detail into everything that we do. So it really is a lot harder when you're trying to say, it's not just learning the songs, it's learning to make the songs sound like the record and sound from an audio perspective, be evocative of the era from whichever record we're playing something from. So we're trying to create a time machine experience, and which is not to say that we're doing everything in a way where we're playing note for note exactly every single thing that's on the record, because my dad didn't specifically set out to do that in a live situation. The songs that had specifically composed parts were played the way they were supposed to be played, but there were also improvisational elements that were in almost every song. And that was why he was so heavily bootlegged. His music changed for each audience that he was performing for. And that was a big goal of his. He wanted his fans to be able to see something that was unique to them that night in that show. And that's a real amazing part of what is possible with music. And it's a huge thing that's missing from music right now,
Agreed.
because most shows are so rehearsed that they're on a grid the music is on a grid, the lighting is on a grid. It's basically running off a computer, and people are faking a lot of things. But yet, people are excited to go see a show like that because they're watching it more than they're listening to it.
Right.
And that's very different than
It's very Las
than
Vegas.
well, yeah, but Las Vegas is the norm for things now. But remember when people were up in arms over Milli Vanilli? We have way worse versions of what is
Oh,
being
yeah.
created now, but no one's complaining about it.
Yeah. No, that's true. No, people lost their minds. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. And now they don't consider it.
Yeah, now it's not even a problem.
Right. Even
So
like, and that's not just in the pop music, in the rock and metal and everything. Like, I've played a lot of big festivals, and you see people have their Pro Tools rigs off the side of the stage, and there's all the background vocals on there. And, it's just like, it's crazy what people are not doing.
yeah, and people are just really expecting the music to just be the background. My dad had a quote where he said that music has become wallpaper for people's lifestyle. And, it's just kind of like a thing that indicates, oh, I'm this type of person. I work in this cubicle and I like this music, which defines me. It's my costume that decorates the world. Like the music you listen to is it's your theme song to let everybody know, oh, I'm that guy. And that is just this weird thing now where people have an expectation that when the music is played, it's supposed to sound just like the record. And it's different if you're actually trying to do it and perform it all live and make it sound like the record versus playing stuff back off a tape and just pretending to play it.
Right. Well, if an artist performs their music differently, but that music defines you, well, holy shit, what did that just do to you?
Yeah.
Did it redefine you, or did it entertain you? I don't know.
Well, the thing that we're seeing too is that people are disconnected from actually, if they're at a live event, they're watching it through their phone. And
Right.
if there's a giant screen monitor on the stage, they're watching the giant screen monitor instead of watching the artist right in front of them. And it used to be that if you were going to see a band in an arena, you'd bring binoculars and you'd be psyched if you got a good view with your binoculars. I get
Right.
it with the big screens and you're playing in big places. That's definitely helpful. But when you're closer, you see people that are watching the screen instead of the person. And then it's like, why is the person even there?
I
Why
don't
is the artist there if you're just watching the screen? So it's just weird.
I've talked about this a bit, but really my ideal venue is no larger than 1500. Cuz I feel like when you get it or like a theater. Like a theater is perfect. Festivals, they're great, but I mean, you can't even make eye contact with a sound person sometimes. They're way
Yeah.
the hell back there, and I don't know that's not really the experience that I want to have. Although, as I've stated before, if I was in Def Leppard and 70,000 people were singing "Pour Some Sugar on Me," that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's all what uh, what you're into it for. I never really consider the aspects of where we're going to be playing or who we're going to be playing for. I just want to make sure that whatever we're doing it the best that we can. So I do prefer playing in seated theaters because they're typically nicer places, but a standing crowd in a rock club does have better energy, and
Oh
sometimes you
yeah.
get a better performance because you're feeding off of that energy. But I've never been a performer that has been doing a whole bunch of stagecraft type of things, especially the last 14 years. We're just trying to really bring music to people that would otherwise not be played, and it's very hard to do, and it's not stuff you can just run around and make a Van Halen show out of. If
Right.
I had the ability to play it with ease and bounce around and do stuff, I probably would, but I could barely walk and play some of this stuff at the same time.
uh, how was the? I mean, you had been playing guitar for years and years and years and years and years before you started preparing to do this. What was the preparation for the very first tour like, as far
Well,
as you diving into what you were going to perform and then orchestrating for everyone else, which I imagine was almost probably just as much of a bear to wrestle.
so the two parts to that are guitar wise to prep. I had to unlearn many of the techniques that had already been developed for years because I was a technically proficient guitar player who could play a lot of complicated things in a rock way. But my dad had such an idiosyncratic style of playing on his own, and his music was composed in a way that had intervallic structures that were not guitaristic. So I had to learn a different way to play with my picking hand. My right hand picking style changed dramatically in a 2 year period. I studied the music for 2 years before I even put the band together. And then when I put the band together, we rehearsed for about 3.5 months before we ever played our first show. And I would learn all of my parts and be practicing them constantly, but I had to be aware of the arrangements overall so that I knew what things I wanted featured in the right way for the show. And sometimes we would have different instrumentation than what was on some of the records. So you have to figure out, okay, is this going to be a guitar part now, or is this going to be a marimba part now? Or,
Right.
we didn't do very much in the way of completely rearranging something so that it was a drastically different arrangement. We stuck to the examples that were given in the music, but there were definitely parts that existed on records that had to be played on a different instrument because we had a different instrument on stage. And but
Did
generally, the challenge was to learn all my stuff and be aware of the other stuff as well, and make sure that everybody was doing what they needed to do, and then finding a good balance of trust when people were doing their jobs well, that you could rely on them to continue to do it well, and that's what led to keeping the band together for a pretty long period of time. I've had personnel changes over a couple of different stretches, and the version of the band that I have that you saw is the best version of the band in terms of people who do what they do well, care about what they do, and have a great attitude while they do it. And that makes a huge difference, because you might have people that are talented but have a terrible attitude, and that makes them.
Wait a minute. Are you trying you trying to tell me that musicians can be difficult?
Yeah, well, sometimes people don't realize what a drag it can be, to be around people who are constantly complaining over the dumbest stuff. Like you go
Right.
to Europe, which has, beautiful things to see, interesting, cool, different, nice food to try. And then somebody who's a typical American will be like, ugh, I can't eat anything here. I got to find some kind of Applebee's or something. And you're like, you're in Italy. You want to go to Applebee's, So
Yeah.
it's stuff like that where it's just pitiful, and you're like, I can't wait to get rid of this person, even if they're a great player. You're like, I can't deal with traveling with that anymore.
Right. Uh, well, not to mention that I'm having a hard time imagining a scenario of a band that would come under more scrutiny if they failed to deliver the goods, you know.
Well, it is
And
a thing where it's kind of the exact opposite career arc that anyone would recommend. Oh yes, let's put you in direct comparison to one of the greatest, most brilliant musicians of all time, and let's see how that goes.
right.
So but I never really worried about it because I didn't care what people were going to think, because I knew if I did my job well and I played the music as well as I could and the band played as well as they could, that there would be no reason to be concerned or have this kind of conversation. So I didn't even think about it. I just knew if I worked hard and I was satisfied with the effort that was put into it, then that was fine. One of the things that was really a good challenge, but also difficult, was when it comes to improvisational soloing. My dad was pretty amazing at spontaneously composing, and he could, because he had such a wide vocabulary in terms of compositional ideas and rhythmic ideas, he could do anything he wanted on the guitar, and he was totally fearless. And even if he didn't have the technical ability to pull something off, he would still go for it. And I loved that about what he did, because it was always with a unique sound, and he would just rip into something, and he would just really, like I said, just be totally fearless. So for me, the real challenge was to broaden my vocabulary and to be able to play in a way that was consistent with what he would do, play in context to the music, and not go too far in another direction that suddenly made it seem like, oh, now this isn't that song anymore. So for me, that was a big challenge, because I had to learn in the same way that you would learn a new language and learn to be fluent in that language. I had to learn enough of my dad's idiosyncrasies or tendencies in his phrasing to be able to then filter my own ideas through that process. And so that's something that changed my guitar playing drastically over the last 14 years, is improvising in that style, being able to do what is natural to me in my own musical vocabulary, but play it in a consistent way that it could also be something that my dad might have played himself. So it's a little tap dance there, where it's like, sometimes I'll play certain things that he played 100% note for note, and then sometimes I'll just use phrases and use them as guideposts. But there's a lot of improv that happens in the shows. I mean, I probably over a whole show might have 25 or 30 minutes of improvisational guitar playing. And I don't want to do the same thing every night. I don't want to do the same thing in each song. I want to be able to play in context to the music, but I want to be able to do something that feels right in that moment and feels spontaneous, not completely worked out. And because that
That's the
is a
best way to honor the music, right?
yeah, but that's also really hard to do, because um, if you've already been playing a certain way for years, you have to really get into the zone and to be able to do it, you have to listen. And that seems like the most obvious thing in the world, but it's one of the hardest things for musicians to do, is to actually listen, and what you're playing is in response to what you're hearing, as opposed to just, oh, I'm playing and everybody else is playing, we're all playing at the same time, and maybe it sounds like we're connected.
Right.
That's the part that takes years of experience to recognize, oh, wait a minute, when I actually can get out of my own way and I can listen and I hear a drum fill and, like, oh, I could actually respond to that. Oh, the bass player just played this part. That sounds cool. What if I end up, answering his phrase? And you're listening for the different things that are happening that are circling your orbit there, and you're responding to it. That inevitably is the best playing, versus just doing something and taking the lead and saying, everybody follow me.
Right. Um, I think that Frank is probably my favorite guitar soloist, like easily probably by a large margin. And for a lot of reasons. No one would ever accuse me of sounding like him because I just don't possess that. But just his playing and music has influenced me in a lot of ways, even when it comes to like getting guitar sounds. I sometimes I'll try to imagine, like, God, what would really poke out here, or just he had such a his own sound, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
he was brilliant in the way that he understood technology and things. He was always doing things that nobody else would even think of doing. Where he'd have his signal split four different ways or even five different ways. In the '70s, his guitar rig was three amplifiers and two DIs, so five
wow.
signals to blend together, and it was the most three-dimensional, coolest guitar sound. That was the best guitar sounding, or best guitar rig, and the best period of his guitar playing was from, say, '76 to maybe 1980. That's when he had the rig that he called Ma Bell.
Was that DI signal affected?
Yeah, the DIs both they were both compressed by a DBX 160 compressor, and they both had different flangers, and they could also be affected by this Oberheim box, which was a sample and hold thing, which created weird patterns and stuff. So, but the clean sound was
Amazing.
always, well, yeah, it was amazing, but it was always blended in with the distorted sound, and oftentimes you would never really know. So you're probably pretty well familiar with the Shut Up and Play Your Guitar record.
You betcha.
Uh, but if you go to listen to Why Can't Johnny Read, um, that if you listen pretty closely, he's playing a Strat, and you'll hear underneath the distortion, there's a direct compressed sound. So when he plays chords, you're hearing this really nice definition, and the low strings sound very three-dimensional, like you can hear all the way around the string, and it's in there just enough where you can hear that definition. But if you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't know why it sounded as good as it sounds.
Are you revealing tricks of how you programmed your Axe effects?
Of course.
Well, the using my individual skill set, I've only been fool enough to try and learn a couple Zappa songs, and you know those are high mountains for me to climb. Um,
Which ones did you go for?
let's see. I did Peaches and Regalia.
That's got some hard parts in it.
Yeah, I mean, and in the scope of the that body of music, it certainly doesn't rank in the most difficult, though, right?
No, it's not. But on guitar, it's pretty hard if you're going to play the arpeggiated lines.
Right. Um, my question for you is when you were learning that stuff, did you have access to transcriptions or sheet music?
The combinations we had certain transcriptions that existed that had come out that were published in books, certain things that were notes from different tours. Then there was actual documents in my dad's own handwriting, and those were the ones that we would know were obviously the real deal, the right notes, the right rhythms, and but we would always compare everything to a recording,
Right.
and sometimes we'd even pull out the master tapes to find out stuff. And what was really interesting, one time we did that for the song, which one was it? It was on, I think it was on Waka Jawaka. I'm spacing on the name right now because there's too many. But one of the melodies had this very dense harmonization to it. And not wanting to just guess at what it was, we got out the master tapes, and it was a really intense section where a trumpet was playing a lot of parts and it was overdubbed multiple times and some other textures. But we found out during this one section, all 12 tones are being used. So it's harmonized with every note. So, but the ranges where the pitches are located made it so that it sounded totally like it was meant to be there.
Right. The
But if
12
you
tones
think
didn't exist in one octave.
yeah, there's definitely multiple octaves, all of these 12 tones, but the fact that every note is playing all at the same time was a pretty good musical joke to be able to harmonize this thing that way,
That's insane.
Yeah.
And happens for how many bars?
Just a few bars in this one phrase, and I'm still spacing on the name of the song. I have to look it up.
I love that you pulled out the master tapes to unlock the mystery of 2 bars of music.
Oh yeah, well, that's nothing compared to like how long it would take to learn a couple of bars of some things. Like when I was first learning the Black Page, I would have to play certain parts of that just over and over and over and over and over, and it would be only like about a second's worth of music, but I would play it all day long, weeks at a time until I could get it up to tempo. So it's when you talk about the Mount Everest and you think, oh, okay, let me try to make some progress. Well, I got 1 second of music done today.
That's that is hyper dedication, and I know that I know that there are a lot of people who appreciate that dedication a lot.
Yeah, definitely have met some of them, and that's one of the things that's really cool about reward music too, is that it will allow me to make a better connection with the people that have supported me. And one of the things that we used to do for so long on tour was we would sign stuff immediately after the show. So we would meet with people, and sometimes it would happen right on the edge of the stage. I would just stay there as everything was being torn down. And there would be people, telling me stories about, oh, I met your dad. I saw him at the Halloween show. And I would hear stories from hundreds or thousands of people over the years. And we would do things, in the venue sometimes, sitting at a table, signing stuff, and meet almost everybody that was in the audience. So in a way, reward music will be a version of that. It'll be a way that I can connect with people in that same way, especially if we do the subscription model type of stuff, because the people that really support from the ground up that way, you can't help but want to have this reciprocal relationship and say, hey, I really appreciate you supporting what I do, and I couldn't do it without you. And that's the whole reason that I think reward music will be able to make a change for a lot of artists, is that they'll be able to have this new understanding, and the fans themselves will get to see like, oh, wait, if I support my favorite artist directly, that really makes a big difference, as opposed to using all of these other things that they don't get the benefit of. And, in that way, it can make a difference for a lot of musicians that are really struggling, because there are plenty of people that are, losing their houses and having all kinds of problems because, we're going on like 8 months of not being able to do what is the mainstay of our existence, which is live shows.
Right. Once record sales went away, not that record sales ever, as we've already covered, accounting, there were a lot of holes there.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. In the last maybe 10 years, all of the publishing stuff and sales don't apply to the vast majority of musicians, because only the biggest artists are still getting the benefit of big sales and things. So, most artists have to rely completely on touring and live shows to exist. And, even there, fans aren't aware of the fact that there's a lot of stuff that still is being taken from the artists. So where they might look at going to buy a t-shirt at a show and saying, wow, these shirts are expensive, why do they have to charge so much? Well, most of the time
takes a cut.
The venue is taking 30%, and you already have your costs of making the stuff. And if you believe me, if any artist could, they would sell it to you for the price that seems more reasonable, and like you would be able to get online, if you were just buying a straight up white t-shirt or something. But there's so much markup from you having to have the stuff made, and then the venue's taking their cut, and you have to have a merch person that you're paying on the road. So suddenly, something that would be $15 becomes $45, just so that you can, not lose money by making the shirt and bringing people out there, So it's tricky, because it all depends on how many colors are involved with the ink and all these things. So, there's just a lot that people don't realize. The people that care, the artists that really kind of run a tight ship, we do everything we can to make stuff as affordable so that you can get the best experience. And it's like I was saying before, instead of casting the widest net and having a non-curated experience for someone, I much prefer trying to do something with a smaller amount of people, but make it the best experience that we can. And that's just how we've always done it.
I think you're doing a good thing. I think you're doing a really good thing, and I think you have a great work ethic, and I appreciate that you're building something like this for people.
Thanks.
I'm gonna look at. Tell me this, because I right before we spoke, I was like, yeah, I should just go ahead and sign up for my account now. I should do it and go through the experience, and then I could talk about it. But I stopped just short, and I was like, I got 10 minutes. I should get some water and go to the bathroom. So let's say you're not a band. Let's say you're a podcast.
Yes, you can actually host podcasts and you have the ability to make them subscribable. Any content on Reward can be subscribable, a song, a video, a podcast. You can create the experience for your fans and draw them in and invite them to do things and be in contact in various different ways, because you have forums, you have groups, you have the ability to do chats, you have all of the things that you're used to in social media, but you can do it from a place that is really your own universe. So it's your broadcast channel, it's your merchandise place, it's everything all in one place. But a podcast, you could easily host and put it on there, and you can add videos, you can do all kinds of stuff. So these things are easy to do, but it really is a website based feel as a platform. It's not an app, and there's a reason it's not an app, because apps take all the information and they use it themselves, like Apple and all these other, Google and whatever. If you have an app, they take a percentage of whatever is coming through, and they get to share all the data, and
Right.
we're not doing that.
So there will not be an interface, a mobile. Oh, I guess it'll be a browser login on your web browser on your phone to.
Right, but you can easily put an icon on your phone in the same way that you reach an app and you
Right.
tap that app. You can have that icon on your phone, and we have something on the website that shows you how to do that.
Yeah.
But it's simple. It will behave the same way as if you were starting up an app. Just take you right to your favorite reward music artists, and once you're there, you can check it out on whatever, a laptop, mobile. And if you're an artist, you can go live on your phone or your laptop or your iPad or whatever you're using. So you have the ability to work from anywhere and do a complete live stream. So we have it set up even that if you, let's say you had a 5-camera shoot and a professional switching system and all that stuff, even that can be integrated into your live stream so that you could have a full on production.
Oh, that's great. That's amazing.
Yeah, we stuck everything we could into this thing, and again, it's all there, all in one place, and it starts at $20 a month. If you try to get all of the same kind of services and use 10 other platforms, you're going to be paying a lot of money to get those things, just to do and whether or not they would even all work together compatibly is another thing. So this is the other benefit to having it all in one place. But what's kind of funny is we have a thing on the site that shows the different companies and the date that they were founded, which country they're from, who the president was that year, what the song of that year was. So, for example, when people think of social media and they think, oh, the new thing, you got to do the new thing. Facebook was created in 2004. So that's 16 years ago, and Bush was president. And the song Dance with My Father by Luther Vandross was the top song.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that Luther Vandross had a #1 hit in the last 30 years.
Yeah. So
40 years.
So then you look at Instagram, and that's October 2010. So that's 9 years old. And Use Somebody from Kings of Leon was the top song that year, and Obama was president.
Right.
But the thing is, people are talking about all these things like, oh, you got to use the newest stuff. Facebook 14 or 16 years ago, Twitter's 14 years old, Spotify's 14 years old. So I think the newest thing besides us Patreon, which is 7 years ago. And that was Somebody That I Used to Know by Gautier was the top song. Again, Obama president.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. Title actually was made 5 years ago, and Get Lucky from Daft Punk was the song of the year.
That
You know,
thing was unavoidable.
yeah, but then you look at Reward Music, which was made, we kind of founded it in January of 2020, but it's Trump is president, and Old Town Road by Lil Nas X is the song of the year.
That song, I don't care for, but in the context of where, sorry to derail the story, that song, I feel like I'm glad it exists for reasons other than the quality of the song.
Well, what's funny is that at a certain point, it doesn't matter what style of music you like. At a certain point, I think a lot of people get to a sense of like music makes you feel something or it doesn't, and you kind of certain things get stuck in your head. And let's say you don't like the song, but it still got stuck in your head. You got to say that that's some crafty songwriting if it gets stuck in your head. So, a
Of
lot of people
course.
used to say, oh, I don't like disco, or I don't like ABBA, or I don't like this. But like, a Bee Gees song, the stuff was crafted so well that it gets in your head. It's produced well. So sometimes, even if I don't necessarily like a song, I can totally respect it on another level of the craftsmanship of certain things or the production of it. So, that might be one of those kind of situations for some people, but it is, at this point, um, with music, I feel like the things that I want to make and the things that I want to do, I want to have I want to create a feeling with something as opposed to something just being a demonstration of something. So,
Right. It seems
yeah.
like that's what a lot of music is, right? It's like watch me do this. Look what I
Well,
can do.
it is in a lot of ways, but then there are some people that have always been super connected to that. I want to make you feel something thing, and that stuff really does tend to be very powerful. So I don't think it's something that you can do specifically on purpose. I think it just is a way, some people, as they express it, it it comes out and makes that connection. There's some guitar players, for example, who are super expressive, like Jeff Beck
Whew.
or Derek Trucks,
Yeah.
where the things that they play, you really respond on an emotional level because it's the placement of the note, it's the nuance, it's those things. And so when you start being really aware of that stuff, you start wanting to be able to make that kind of connection yourself. But sometimes artists take a while to get there. Some get it straight away; they're like fully formed early on, and then some people it takes a really long time. I know for myself, um, I've done all kinds of different music and all kinds of different playing, but it's only in the last maybe 10, 15 years that I've been like, I've done so many things that are revolving around things that are complicated. um, I would like to do something that is more simplistic sometime and just have it be to specifically uh, promote uh, a feeling. So that's one of the things that I am going to look forward to in the coming years here, is doing some different music that is really about connecting in emotional ways on stuff. And it sounds more simplistic than it is. It's not. always that easy to do, but
Yeah, of course.
you know,
Especially when that's what you're setting out to do. I think some people have an innate that's just how they express themselves. They have a musical vocabulary that is simple, and that is precisely how they communicate themselves to people. Um, but
yeah, and there
unlike
are so many different layers and levels of that kind of stuff. So that's where it gets blurred, because there are some people that can take in a lot of information and want a lot of detail and all this stuff. And there are others that are like, too much. I need the simple.
right,
And so it's interesting to see if you can bridge the gap, or just as a challenge, if you're somebody like me, for example, that is used to doing things that are complicated, not because I only like complicated things, but I want to be able to challenge myself to make the point with less, and that will be an interesting experience.
do you have any? What's the most I swear I know that we planned on speaking for an hour and a half, and I swear I'm going to let you go. But do you have any? What's the most contemporary music that you're into? Is there anything that like people would be surprised that you enjoy?
I don't have a lot of time to listen to a whole lot of new music. I've listened to more music um, during the pandemic than I have in the last 15 years, but I don't know much about the current most popular artists, but I do listen to whatever I hear, in a way where I like to find the good in it.
Yeah.
If I don't like it, then it's fine. I don't have to have a problem with it. It's just like, oh, I like other things more. But there are some artists that have done some things that I like. As far as a contemporary artist, one of the people that does stuff that I find really interesting and cool is Saint Vincent.
Oh, Annie Clark's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, she's ridiculous.
Yeah, she's definitely super cool. But I like to also hear stuff that is like folk music and other weird things. Like I grew up hearing things that my dad liked, and one of the things that he turned me on to a long time ago was Bulgarian music, the Bulgarian women's choir. I like to listen to that stuff. It's just crazy and beautiful in a lot of ways. But there's weird rhythms and things too. The Balkan rhythms are really interesting to me. And there's a guy that his name is Ivo Papasov, and he makes music that is called wedding music. So it's the Ivo Papasov Wedding Music Band, and it's some of the craziest clarinet playing you'll ever hear. I have no idea how this guy is doing what he's doing, but stuff like that is just out of control. And I like to see when somebody just does something that is natural to them, but completely unnatural to everyone else. I love that.
That always gets my attention as well. Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, man, I I promised that I was gonna let you go, and I'm gonna do it now. This episode, I'm gonna get this up and published tomorrow, so that
Great.
it coincides with the soft launch. Um, and I wish you the best of luck. I think I'll probably go with one of my projects. Go get myself signed up over there.
Yeah, let
Um,
me know if you have any questions. I can also get some of our team to help if you need some speeding up of the learning curve, because it just takes a little bit of time to understand where everything's located, and then it becomes pretty easy to um, just do anything you want and learn about how to adjust prices for stuff, or
awesome.
uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
thank you. Well,
sure.
Yeah, good luck. And again, congratulations. I know it's probably been a mountain of work.
Yep, it sure has.
It doesn't seem like you're any stranger to taking on seemingly like overwhelming projects, though.
Yeah, it's when it's like I get a note when Sisyphus is being required to push the rock up the hill. It's like, oh yeah, somehow I am Sisyphus. But I think that when people do get a chance to check this out and really consider the fact that social media itself is not really creating an opportunity for artists to earn money with their music, because the social media they're using isn't connected to their bank account, and they don't have an easy way to do something and reach their fans and create a connection directly. And that's the real reason this exists, because artists can't do what they do without their fans, and fans hopefully can recognize that artists are struggling in a lot of ways now. And if they can support them directly, that is the very best solution for the music industry.
And furthermore, social media platforms were not created by musicians for musicians.
No, I mean, they're created to benefit themselves and sell advertising. And that's the thing is, music does have value, and you should be able to get the value out of your life's work. It shouldn't just be transferred to a membership service industry who then pays you nano pennies on the dollar.
You mean I could make that much?
Yeah, isn't that exciting? You could actually get a check that it costs them more to ship the check than you got, for the check itself.
Well, I'll be sure to. Well, I guess I won't need to plug. We jumped right into it off the top, so I won't need to plug it a ton in the intro. But I appreciate you taking in so much time on a Sunday morning.
Sure.
And
Thank
talking
you.
to me. And I look forward to a time when people can get back out on the road. And
yeah, hopefully that will be soon. But we just never know. So
we do not.
That's why, again, reward music should be very helpful to a lot of musicians.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a great day, man.
You too. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.